Good evening and welcome to this very special 40th anniversary celebration. Tonight, we'll be celebrating the great work Aga Khan Foundation Canada has been doing to build a more peaceful, prosperous, and pluralist world for all. Now, this would not be possible without the support of Canadians, including the Canadian Ismaili community. The volunteers, the donors, the fundraisers, your energy and your passion that you commit to this work is what makes all of this happen. My name is Hoops Madhavji, and I'm so excited to be celebrating with you all tonight. Over the next hour, we'll be hearing from some very special guests, and we'll have conversations with some experts who have helped change the face of development. Now, I recognize that it's a little unusual to not be celebrating in person, but I do hope that you are somewhere comfortable and somewhere safe as we celebrate tonight. Now, before we start, I would love to read this. I would love to acknowledge the Indigenous peoples of all the lands that we are on today. While we meet today on a virtual platform, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the importance of the land, which we each call home. We do this to reaffirm our commitment and responsibility in improving relationships between nations and to improving our own understanding of local Indigenous peoples and their cultures. From coast to coast to coast, we acknowledge the ancestral and unceded territory of the Inuit, Métis, and First Nations people that call this nation home. Now tonight, we are all together to celebrate a pretty big milestone. 40 years ago, Aga Khan Foundation Canada was born. Since then, the foundation has supported interventions across a wide range of program areas, including health, education, and civil society that have helped build resilient communities and strong institutions in Asia and Africa. But this doesn't happen without partnerships. As I mentioned earlier, the partnership between Canadians and the Canadian Ismaili community are at the core of this work. Your commitment and your passion are what makes all of this possible. But there is another partner that has been there since day one, 40 years ago, and that is the Canadian government. So we will explore some key highlights in these relationships and in these partnerships with Aga Khan Foundation Canada. But first, we are joined by two very special guests. Dr. Mahmoud Ibu, the diplomatic representative to Canada for the Aga Khan Development Network, and the Honorable Karina Gould, who is the Federal Minister of International Development.
Friends and partners, my name is Mahmoud Ibu, and I'm the diplomatic representative to Canada for the Aga Khan Development Network. This year marks the 40th anniversary of the establishment of the Aga Khan Foundation here in Canada. 40 years of partnership with Canada and Canadian institutions in which the Foundation has sought to improve the quality of life of impoverished peoples around the world. I would like to thank many of the volunteers, all of the volunteers, and our partners for helping us in this extraordinary agenda. The impact that the Foundation and its partners have had in improvement of education, in healthcare, maternal child healthcare, in reduction of poverty, in the help and assistance to women and young children, particularly girls, in getting educations, has had an extraordinary impact around the world. So on this 40th occasion, 40th anniversary, I would like to convey once more our congratulations and our prayers that the Foundation, its partners in its work, will continue for another 40 years to come. Thank you.
On the occasion of your 40th anniversary, let me take this moment on behalf of the Government of Canada to offer our sincere congratulations. Félicitations aux Fondations Aga Khan Canada sur l'occasion de votre 40e anniversaire. For the last 40 years, the Aga Khan Foundation of Canada has worked in partnership with the Government of Canada, supporting millions of women and men in Africa and in Asia. Aujourd'hui, nous reconnaissons et nous célébrons les contributions des centaines et milliers de bénévoles et donateurs qui contribuent à vos travaux. I also want to recognize the role of the volunteers and donors and fundraisers who make the work that you do possible. I want to congratulate you and highlight your successful track record in health, education, sustainable development, and gender equality. The Aga Khan Foundation of Canada is a trusted, innovative, and effective partner in strengthening Canada's ability to exercise its global leadership. And your work helps contribute to our mutual objectives of creating a more sustainable, a healthier, and more equal world. I'm looking forward to continuing to work with the Aga Khan Foundation of Canada for many years to come. But for today, take a moment to enjoy, to celebrate, and to reflect on all of your successes and what the future holds. Congratulations, félicitations.
Thank you, Dr. Ibu and Minister Gould. In fact, we're taking a cue from Minister Gould, and we're taking this moment right here to celebrate and recognize the achievement of Aga Khan Foundation Canada. Now, as we heard previously, AKFC has been working to help improve the quality of life of communities in Asia and Africa for the past 40 years. And that includes a wide array of program areas, from healthcare to education to financial security to food security. Now, one of the first investments the Canadian government and AKFC made was in the area of northern Pakistan. AKRSP, or the Aga Khan Rural Support Program, was truly one of the earliest examples of this innovative relationship between the Canadian government and Aga Khan Foundation Canada. And the impact that this partnership has had over the last 40 years is really impressive. I got a chance to sit down with the general manager of AKRSP, Abdul Malik, to learn more. First of all, thank you very much for joining us for tonight's celebration. We're celebrating 40 years of Aga Khan Foundation Canada. And I know you've been involved with AKFC, but also with the Aga Khan Rural Support Program. So can you tell me a little bit about the program and your involvement with the foundation?
Well, thank you, Huz. I've been associated with AKRSP and Aga Khan Foundation Canada for quite some time now. I grew up in one of the villages where AKRSP first started its program back in early 80s. And then when I did my undergrads, I joined AKRSP. That was my first job. And then I was fortunate to have the opportunity to lead the organization as a general manager in recent years. So you can say that I have known the organization from both community side, but also in various professional roles.
Now, this is in Pakistan, right? Because didn't it start in?
It's in Pakistan, yeah, exactly, in northern Pakistan. So the program started in northern Pakistan, as I said, in early 80s, with the objective of addressing poverty, extreme poverty in the region, and also to improve quality of life of local communities. The program was founded on the belief that communities can transform their own lives if a program like AKRSP can help them organize and unleash their collective energies. And at the time, explaining the unique context of Gilgit-Baltistan and Chitral and the difficulties communities face and the new developments at the time, like Karakoram Highway construction, His Highness Aga Khan characterized AKRSP as a program which enabled communities to participate in developing what they thought they need and in finding solutions to practical everyday problems. So, driven by this central philosophy of community first, over the years, AKRSP organized local communities into village organizations and women's organizations, and over time also into their federations, and they work across a number of themes, basically, which were important for the local communities. For example, work in the natural resource management, which includes agriculture, livestock, and forestry and other related sectors, on enterprise development, microfinance, women's empowerment, skills, and community physical infrastructure, which covered roads, irrigation channels, and even small-scale energy generation projects. So the spectrum of work AKRSP did over the years was quite multi-thematic and quite massive.
Yeah, the spectrum, that's the right word, actually. It just seems very vast. Is that what makes it so unique? Is that one of the things that makes AKRSP so unique? Because for it to be going on for 40 years is, it says something, you know.
So you touched upon very important feature of it, 40 years, right? So it's a very long-term program with a very long-term view. So that itself is a very unique feature. The other important feature, as I noted, was the centrality of communities' first approach, right? So this is the very central piece of the program. And beyond these two important features, I would say that it's a very broad-based program. By that, I mean that it actually engages majority of households across the region where we work, both men and women, and all kinds of population segments. And it's truly a broad-based organization. And very few organizations you will see will have that kind of deep engagement and a footprint in the region, right? The second important feature is multi-thematic, and that is important because it increases the relevance of the program, right? So it addresses the multiplicity of needs of the communities, which are so important to advance the quality of life, which is not just say, for example, income or any other one domain of life. So in that way, it's also very unique. And we don't talk often much about it, but the third important unique feature is that it is anchored in the broader Acadian family, which brings to bear resources in other important sectors. For example, education, health, habitat, economic development, and cultural development. When you think about other programs and unique features of this one, the fact that we are part of a larger network also gives us a lot of assets, both knowledge-wise, human resources-wise, as well as our programs to create deeper and a wider impact in the region.
That's one of the things that I'm finding very enlightening. Doing these interviews is there's the program, there's like AKFC, and you go down there and it's sort of like a grassroots and multifaceted. But then you're right, the fact that it's part of a larger development network, it's like it is growing, and it's about building a sustainable region and a sustainable country, which I find I didn't really grasp that really honestly until now, like the real, like just how important that is and how important the development network is to the process. I find that very exciting. One of the things that we're celebrating, this is 40 years, we're celebrating and we're thanking, Canadians, the community, we're thanking the government, in this country. Can you talk a little bit about the role of the government of Canada and the relationship it has with Aga Khan Foundation Canada over the past 4 decades?
The relationship between Aga Khan Foundation and, for that matter, with AKRSP and the government of Canada, at the time it was called CEDA, now it is called Global Affairs Canada, right? So the long-term nature of this relationship has been truly enduring, transformative, and evolutionary. But what do I mean by these different terms, right? So one is that, from the very beginning, Canadian government was the first one to support this, rather the first pioneering community development program in one of the remotest parts of Pakistan. And what this long-term relationship gave AKRSP is the continuity and the long-term horizon in terms of program thinking, and also to work with the Canadian government to co-design and co-imagine programs which were informed by the learnings of the past, but also very relevant to today and forward-looking. And this is truly a very unique feature. Very rarely you see these kind of long-term partnerships, which are so essential for both stability, sustainability of the impact which we create in many of these geographies. I also call it a very evolutionary in the sense that in the early years, majority of support from Canadian government, and for that matter from other donors, was around some of the critical needs on the ground, which are around irrigation, infrastructure, agriculture, and the initial formation of community organization. Over a period of time, the relationship has evolved to focus on emerging and more complex issues, if you like, right? For example, strengthening community institutions, women's empowerment, youth opportunity, and youth development. These are the new challenges which we face in many of these communities. And in that way, essentially, this evolutionary relationship has been very critical. I also call it transformative in the sense that the early investments which SIDA made, today their impacts and the multiplier effects are in many ways, truly profound. I recall taking some of senior officials of government of Canada a few years ago to one of the remotest villages in Upper Hunza, to a source village where in the early 80s, probably a few $1,000s of investment in irrigation channel has now transformed a complete barren land into an oasis. Obviously, it has contributed to the economic well-being of the people, but it's also contributed to the environmental well-being in the region, right? And this is just one example, but there are multiple examples across many villages and the valleys. And you won't believe the land values in those areas are now in millions of dollars. So a small catalytic investment in the community can create so much profound impact over a period of time. I want to also kind of emphasize one important point. I think Canadian government's support was also instrumental in shaping the thinking at AKRSP, and I would say at AKFC, around women's empowerment early on. Not many people were at the time probably as I would say, forcefully advocating and investing in this important area. And over a period of time, we have seen both increased resources from the Canadian government to do more in this space. So I would call that it is truly a very important relationship for AKD, and both in terms of informing our thinking, but also in terms of creating the impacts on the ground in the lives of the people who matter. I also want to note one important thing here. Is very recently, in early, I think 2011, Canadian government supported us to work on youth engagement and employment issues. And we are now replicating that with other donor support in, for example, Kyrgyz Republic, and we are informing our youth thinking, youth development thinking in other regions, again, inspired and learned by some of the investments which we received from the Canadian government.
Well, I mean, listen, I think you gave us a really good overview of some of the accomplishments that AKRSP has done over the last 4 decades, and the relationship with the Canadian government, I think, highlighted just it's like a very important and fruitful relationship. And now, you're right, there is some more work to be done, but if the last 4 decades has shown us anything, is that it is possible. Abdul, thank you very much for your time. Congratulations, and thank you for your dedication and your passion, and for spending this time with me and all of us here as we celebrate 40 years of Aga Khan Foundation Canada. Thank you.
And thank you again for taking the time to sit with me and talk about AKRSP's work together with Global Affairs Canada. And, obviously on behalf of communities, I am one of those members of the community, as well as on behalf of Acadian. Obviously, we are most grateful to the Canadian government and the people of Canada, the taxpayers and the people who have contributed to this journey, if you like. Thank you so much for your time as well. Take care.
Thanks. Thank you, brother. Now, we just heard about the great work that is being done in Pakistan, but now let's head on over to Afghanistan Now, many Canadians may be familiar with this part of the world, but that might be because of the news. However, the partnership between Canada, AKFC, and the government of Afghanistan tells a much bigger story. I got a chance to chat with Sherzad Hirji earlier this week. She's AKDN's diplomatic representative to Afghanistan. Watch this. Ambassador Hirji, Sherzad, this is, you're in Kabul right now. The last time I saw you was in Toronto. We were supposed to go for lunch, and now you're there. What? And you've taken, this is very exciting. This has been a pleasant surprise to speak to you. I know you've worn, you've had different responsibilities with Aga Khan Foundation Canada and the development network over the years. Can you tell me, before we even get into why you're in Afghanistan, just tell me a little bit about your background and the work that you've done with the development network.
Thank you, Hus. Great question to start us off in. And yes, that lunch is outstanding. So inshallah, we will do that, either in Kabul or in Toronto. So, inshallah. My history with the AKDN, with AKFC specifically, goes back to the early mid-1980s, when AKFC was a relatively new organization based in Vancouver. And I had just emigrated to Canada from England, and one of my first jobs actually was working at AKFC in Vancouver for a short period as a communications specialist. And that was my first real exposure to development work in the Canadian context. And through my last 25, 30-year history, really, I've been really privileged to play a number of roles within AKFC. And the most recent was as a national committee member, which I started in 2002, I think, and finished in about 2017. It was a long tenure. And it was the first investments that I remember making in Afghanistan in about 2002. At that time, I had to look up a map. I didn't even know where Afghanistan was on the map. Wasn't clear to me what we were doing, but it was clear that it was very important for a number of reasons. And so that was in 2002. And fast forward, I now happen to be the diplomatic representative for the AKDN here in Afghanistan. So that has been my journey to where I am right now.
Wow. That is it's just the length and the breadth of work is really incredible, and kind of like almost like a full circle moment, that the fact that you're there now is pretty exciting. I just want to mention to our viewers who are watching, and thank you, that there's a bit of a delay, and you know what, it might be because you're in Kabul, or it might be because I'm in a basement. It's one, but there might be a little bit of a internet connection delay. So let's talk about Afghanistan, because this is why you're there, and why we're chatting. So Canadians, Canada has had engagement in Afghanistan, for the last couple of decades, but the news that we watch and read about tend to focus on military engagement, conflict, crisis. How has Canada invested in Afghanistan's long-term development through Aga Khan Foundation Canada?
So I'll go back to the early 2002s. We signed an accord between the government of Afghanistan and the Ismaili Imamate, and that was an enabling framework for the AKDN and AKFC specifically to start to work in Afghanistan, because it was seen to be a country of opportunity. And to do the work that we needed to do here, we leveraged our regional presence. We were already working in Tajikistan. That was an easy way to move into Afghanistan at a point of humanitarian crisis. And as we do with the AKDN, we work with like-minded partners, donors, partners, organizations that are invested in the same outcomes, which is peace, prosperity, stability for the people of Afghanistan. Canada was a very early, I would say, a very thoughtful and very smart investor in development in Afghanistan. We worked with Canada right from the beginning to start to look at everything from basic education, health, livelihoods, all of the kinds of things that from the ground up really are important anchors in development. Yes, government level work is important. Yes, government priorities are important. We work within those. But ultimately, I think we and Canada believed that investing in the community level, investing in the villages, in the districts, and people at the grassroots is really what endures sustainability, it endures involvement, and it means that people own the process. We're not doing top-down stuff. We are there as an enabler. We're there as a partner, we're there as a supporter, but people define their priorities and we want to be part of it. And so education, health, livelihoods were our first investments, including specifically for women and girls.
And are you like, I mean, you clearly, you know what's exciting about that is that, you know, I've hosted, you know, so many partnership walks throughout the continent, and I always talk about sustainable development. Like these are some talking points, you know, like when I'm on stage, I'm seeing, but I love, it warms my heart to hear it come from you, and just the difference that is being made from the support that is happening here. Like, you know, the support that's happening in this part of the world, that difference, the difference is being made. Can you talk a little bit about how the investments, maybe a couple examples, have made a difference in Afghanistan?
Sure. So I'll give you a couple of examples. I'll start with girls' education. We've worked with Canada specifically on making sure that girls have access to education. And this is for girls in remote districts. Afghanistan, parts of Afghanistan, when you get to the northern areas, are particularly remote. Getting around is difficult. Getting good teachers in terms of being able to get training for teachers who can teach girls is difficult. Getting girls to schools is difficult. And so it's a very basic level investment right from the early days to say, look, girls need education and we need to find a way to support. And so the starting point with our work with Canada was really to start again at the village level. You can't bring in top-down development, as I said. Working with elders, working with the local community, understanding whether you need to build a school in that community or you need to get the girls to a school in a neighboring community where you've got some leverage because you've got more girls together, you've got teachers. So working very basically at that level of education in the community is where we started. I would say over the last 20 years or so, and certainly through the partnerships with Canada, we can easily count close to a quarter of a million girls who've gone through education. And if you, again, we are one partner in Afghanistan, there are many others, but if you look at overall the investment in girls' education, it has been significant. And you see that now because you see a group of young women who are coming up to be educators themselves now. They are teachers, they are nurses, they work in government. There are now over 200 women who are judges in Afghanistan, over 2,000 women who are in the army. There are women ministers, they are deputy ministers, they are deputy governors of different provinces. It's a magnificent story of Afghanistan, actually, and I think we can certainly take credit for contributing to that story. Wow. As part of that bigger picture in Afghanistan. And again, that's not something you will hear very much because the bad news is the news that really sells.
That's right.
But those kinds of investments that are very successful.
Oh, that's wonderful. You talk about other organizations that are there that help contribute, specifically with the Development Network and Aga Khan Foundation Canada. Is it the like getting down to the root? Is that what makes us unique? Like I want to understand what makes this organization, Aga Khan Foundation Canada, and the Development Network and all the work that it does in Afghanistan, what makes it unique down there?
Yeah, there's a few things that make us unique. One is, again, as I said, it's really starting from the bottom up, understanding the government's priority to building the country. Secondly, it's doing multiple things. Development isn't one thing. Development is understanding what is important in people's lives. It's a combination of education, health. In Afghanistan, our footprint actually in the cultural area has been very important. The Aga Khan Trust for Culture here has restored over 140 monuments, because the history of this country goes back to Alexander the Great. It goes back to 2nd century before BC. There is a deep history, and I think connecting people to their culture and to their history here is something that is an important priority. So we do work in the cultural area, we do work in health, we do work in education. And just as importantly, we have some very important economic investments, because again, Afghanistan is a country that is trying to build, going from a war economy to a peace economy. And over time, we've been part of that. So you will recall, many will recall, in 2002, Roshan was one of the first investors in Afghanistan, skipped over the whole landline issue and went straight to cell phones. A huge success story. It is now one of the largest companies and one of the largest taxpayers actually in Afghanistan. So Roshan started here very early on, economic investment. The Serena Hotel opened up, a 5-star hotel. People were surprised. Hazrat His Highness had no question that rebuilding after conflict was all about quality. People did not deserve any less because there had been conflict, and so a 5-star hotel was up. The first microfinance bank got one of the first banking licenses in Afghanistan. It has a massive loan portfolio now for microfinance. A quarter of its clients are women, small micro enterprises. And so we have this economic investment as well, and we make sure that people then can participate in the economy as much as they have access to education, livelihoods, health, et cetera, et cetera. So we look at the entire portfolio to make what we do sustainable. It's not an in and out intervention. It's not a short-term intervention. We are here for a long time, and we will stay here for a long time, inshallah.
Now, is staying there a long time because it's like, what is in your vision? What does the future of Afghanistan look like? Because it's interesting when we're here and we're like, we're raising funds and we're building awareness to eradicate global poverty. Like these are the dreams that we have, and we're hearing about the progress and the success that is happening. What does the future of Afghanistan look like, and in your vision, and the future of Aga Khan Foundation Canada and the Development Network and its involvement in Afghanistan, like long term? Like what is the dream? What does that look like?
I think that's a good question to ask the people of Afghanistan. What is it that they want for their country? I think that's where the vision really starts.
Right.
As an enabler, I think what we hope and pray for, which I think is what every Afghan hopes and prays for, is peace. There has not been peace and security in this country for a long time. There has been conflict for over 40 years. A whole generation has grown up knowing nothing but war and insecurity. And so I think first and foremost, I think this is a priority. And again, as AKFC, as AKDN, we really feel fundamentally what we're trying to do is to contribute to stability, stabilization, development on the ground that ultimately will be part of whatever peace process ends up. So that would be kind of the first pillar of this vision. I think the second pillar of this vision would be that this society has often been defined by the differences, ethnic differences, tribal differences, regional differences. And I think one of the things that we know from Canada, for example, is that where we are a pluralistic society that understands, recognizes our differences, but we build on our strengths going forward for the common purpose. I think that notion of pluralism, I think, would be very important for Afghan society to move forward. Certainly, I do see that in the next generation, people are less defined and, in a sense, held back by their ethnic background. They're more inclined to move forward with their vision of wanting to build a sustainable Afghanistan. I think the third pillar of that would be a society that is defined by some incredible benchmarks. So if we look back to 2002, maybe 10% of the population had access to good basic health care. Now, about 75% of people have access to basic healthcare. Canada has had a huge contribution in the provinces where we work to be able to provide that access to healthcare. We've leveraged AKU in Karachi. We've leveraged that for training of nurses, of midwives, of some of that basic infrastructure. I think this vision of an educated society, an informed society, and an innovative society. You've probably read, because they've made the global news, that a group of young Afghan girls, the robotics team, took on some car parts and have put together a ventilator or a prototype ventilator to tackle COVID. Right? It's a group of young girls. They're smart, they're savvy, they're tech savvy, and they want to make a difference. You see stories like this all the time. And so I think this notion of building Afghanistan and its future and what it can be is phenomenal. And I'll give you one more story because, again, I think this made the headlines. So we have a hospital here in Kabul that the Aga Khan University manages. It's called FMIC, the French Medical Institute for Mothers and Children. It's a partnership between the government of Afghanistan, the AKDN, AKU, the government of France, and La Chaîne d'Espoir, which is a French not-for-profit charity organization. Focuses primarily on building expertise in areas that don't exist in Afghanistan. And started as a mothers and children hospital with a neonatal unit, and comparable, because I've seen it, to what I've seen at Sick Kids Hospital in Toronto. So a few weeks ago, you would have heard that there was an absolutely gut-wrenching attack on a maternity hospital in Kabul, where a large number of mothers, babies, and healthcare professionals were killed. A 4-hour-old baby was shot. They didn't know where to take her, because for a surgeon to fix a newborn's leg is a very specialized surgery. And they took her to our hospital, to the French Medical Institute for Mothers and Children, again, supported also by Canada. The surgeon, Dr. Bina, does a lot of things with young babies. He's a neonatal specialist. He knows babies. He said there is no book, there is no article written on how to do surgery on an 11-hour-old baby. By the time they got her into surgery, she was 11 hours old. So the team mobilized, did some quick learning, and they did surgery on her, and she survived. They saved her leg. And he's now writing an article on how to tackle gunshot wounds in babies who are 11 hours old. Right. Afghanistan is creating knowledge in a world. Unfortunately, it's not the kind of knowledge we want to create more of, but it is creating knowledge because we have smart people who are committed and passionate about their country, and so this will now contribute to global literature on how to deal with war zones and injuries in war zones. So, I mean, I could go on. I could go on with kind of, but this is the vision of what Afghanistan can be. And I think this peace, stability, political settlement will enable the population to just, I think, thrive. And I think that opportunity, we are just at the inflection point of that opportunity happening.
Wow. Ambassador Hirji, thank you very much. I just want to say, like, it's very exciting to hear about the progress that's happening in Afghanistan, and the contribution that is made. Like, we fundraise, we do all these exciting events in Canada and the US, at least, at least at the different spots where I'm hosting the different walks. And it's wonderful to see that there is an impact being made. And I love the vision, and I love the vision of it. And I think that is exciting. And I think those are stories that we don't often get to hear. Thank you very much for your time. And let's do lunch. I guess I'll have to be there. We'll grab some kebabs at some point.
I know just the place for you. So thank you so much for this opportunity. Thank you. Appreciate it.
Yeah, of course.
Okay. Take care.
Sherzad just mentioned the important work around gender equality in Afghanistan. And this type of work is happening all around the world. We can't fight poverty and leave half the population behind, which is why gender equality is critical to AKFC's mission. In June of last year, AKFC participated in Women Deliver. It's the world's largest conference on gender equality and the health, rights, and well-being of women and girls. One of the speakers at the event was Jane Wanyama. She is the CEO of the Aga Khan Hospital in Kisumu, Kenya. Her talk was so moving and so powerful that we would love to show it to you now.
Good morning. It's really a pleasure to be here today and speak about women in Western Kenya. My name is Jane Wanyama. I'm a nurse midwife and a CEO of the Aga Khan Hospital, Kisumu, Kenya. In many communities in Kenya, a girl child is deemed a lesser person. Women and girls do not traditionally have control over everything about themselves, including, sadly, their own health. At the household level, decisions are made by the male heads of the households. In the community, people still believe in many harmful myths that impact the health of women, including access to health care. I saw that I could make a change in making sure that some of these challenges have been sorted out, being a professional nurse midwife. Unfortunately, the public does not always value the skills, competencies, and capabilities of nurses. And therefore, I felt a very strong urge to improve the public image of this profession. This required me to be in the influential position, and so I chose the path of leadership and management. Upon completion of my MBA, I worked myself up to become the hospital CEO. This meant that as a nurse, I was in the boardroom and in round table meetings, leading the discussions that inform health systems management and strengthening. The Aga Khan Hospital Kisumu in 2016 became the implementing partner of Access Project. The project, funded by the Government of Canada and Aga Khan Foundation, aims to increase quality and through extending and strengthening systems which then focus on being to improve the health of women and newborns in rural Kenya. Initially, as a midwife, I participated in the project as a focal person. But as a CEO, I not only identified myself with the women, and not just as a professional midwife, but I was now a leader, accountable for the project deliverables, ensuring that the project is delivered with the desired quality results on time and within budget. Through the project, the Aga Khan Hospital Kisumu has partnered with Kenyanya Hospital, which is a government health facility in Kisii County serving about 30,000 people. Before we formed this partnership, the government facilities struggled with a lot of issues, having to transfer women so many kilometers just to get access to good quality health care. The facility lacked basic equipment, utilities, while the staff lacked skills and knowledge to provide quality maternal and neonatal care. As would be expected, the outcomes were a high rate of morbidities and mortalities. Through this project, the gender barriers that negatively impacted the access to health are being addressed. And as a result, there has been an increase of the number of women receiving timely, quality care through pregnancy, birth, and even child care. The community health volunteers was deemed a very crucial part to record success. Community health volunteers were people who belong to those communities and are people who know exactly what is happening in their households. They understand what taboos stand in the way of proper care for women and girls. They are trusted by their communities and come through as change agents who, when empowered and provided with the right tools, will create a lasting change for the health outcomes. Through the community health volunteers, we have been able to demystify some of the harmful myths and taboos, and coupled with many other appropriate tools, we see women and children getting better health care. And that is why it's important that we had this project come to Kisii, Kenya. And not just that, male involvement has also come in a very important factor. And it's important that men take an active role in parenting. That is David. David is a beneficiary of the project and has supported Ruth, his wife, through the pregnancy, birth, and caring for their second-born baby. Antenatally, the services were provided in the antenatal block building that was actually provided by the Access Project. David felt very comfortable to be part of this care because there was facilities that would be able to support him. When Ruth went to labor, David made sure that she got to the hospital in good time, and the type of care that she received was to give them a baby that was healthy, and this was in the renovated facilities. Florence, as we can see her there, is now a 2-year-old girl with both parents as active caregivers. Involving women in leadership is the change that we need to improve health outcomes in our communities and accelerate the achievement of the SDGs. Being a female CEO makes me different from my male counterparts in many ways, but one main one is that women adopt a participative leadership style. Women understand and embrace the fact that if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go with others. Having started my career as a nurse midwife and now as a CEO, I know the power in me is unstoppable. I know myself. I believe in myself and all I can be. The history, myths, and taboos do not define me. There is something inside me that is greater than any obstacle out there. I am coming through as a reliable leader and an expert in my field and specialty as a midwife to reliably prove that Kenyan women can deliver. The power in me is real. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
I've heard that saying before, and I love it. If you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go with others. And the way Jane puts that in that context, that really hit home. Now, speaking of great leaders, for the past 30 years, Aga Khan Foundation Canada has worked with young leaders through their International Youth Fellowship. The program has placed over 500 Canadians in 8-month overseas postings and helped launch their international careers. I got a chance to chat with Atia Hirji. She's a youth fellow from 2017, but was also a volunteer and staff member for the World Partnership Walk. Here's our conversation. Thank you very much for joining us. We are celebrating 40 years of Aga Khan Foundation Canada. I want to know how you first got involved with the walk, like the World Partnership Walks, and AKFC. So how'd you get involved?
Sure. So I've been involved with the partnership walk probably since I could walk myself. I've been a fundraiser on a family team, a corporate team, a school team, and every year without fail, I also volunteer on walk day, no matter what city I'm living in. I also worked with AKFC in corporate engagement for a few years, so that allowed me to engage workplaces kind of in the spirit of the walk, and then to also get them involved in the tremendous work that AKFC is undertaking overseas.
And then, so I want to talk to you about this youth fellowship that you have now taken, that you finished. Where were you based at with this youth fellowship? Actually, before we can start that, what is the youth fellowship? Break that down for us. Tell me what that is, and then tell me where they sent you.
For sure. So the fellowship is an opportunity for young Canadians from various backgrounds to travel and live overseas, usually in a developing country, working for one of the agencies within the AKDN or a similar organization. And it's this incredible immersive experience that really allows you to connect with locals, to have an impact on the country that you're living in, but simultaneously grow professionally and personally. And so for me, I had reached a point in my career in international development where I was very eager to move overseas and to kind of roll up my sleeves and be working out in the field, if you will.
Right.
And I was placed in Bishkek, which is the capital city of Kyrgyzstan in Central Asia. So somewhere I never thought I would travel to, let alone live in.
Did you have a choice? Like, were there like a list of things like, oh, okay, you can go here, 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 and you chose that, or did they just?
Yeah.
They just
So what
said,
they
this is where you're going. Bye.
pretty much, you are able to kind of rank all of the possible countries. You're able to kind of rank what kind of work you want to engage in, and then based on your skill set and your background and all of those preferences, they kind of place you somewhere in the world. So never thought I would be in Central Asia, but it was the most incredible experience. And in fact, I ended up extending my time there and staying for a full year.
Can you tell me a little bit about the experience? Give me an anecdote or something that might have stuck with you from your time there, like one cool thing.
Yeah, I think it was the biggest thing that stuck with me was working alongside such passionate and selfless people. And that's kind of what pushes me and that's what inspires me is being able to see firsthand those people who work tirelessly and wholeheartedly to get the job done and are so passionate about what they do. So I feel like that's kind of what inspired me and then also being able to meet a lot of those that are benefiting from some of the programs that AKFC and other agencies in the AKDN are implementing.
What's some of the work that you got a chance to either take part in or got a chance to witness?
So I was placed with the University of Central Asia, which is a relatively new non-for-profit, essentially, higher education institution in Central Asia. And there are a few campuses now, but they're in remote, very mountainous regions, and they're meant to serve these brilliant students that live in essentially the middle of nowhere. So it was incredible to be able to meet some of these students that have so much potential and have this thirst for knowledge and this idea that they want to better themselves, to educate themselves, to ultimately then go back to the communities where they grew up and have an impact on their communities and improve the livelihoods of their neighbors and their families.
I've not been involved in the walk, but I was walking before I actually did the walk, so a little older than you. But what I find really fascinating is that you went there and you saw the work firsthand. So as someone who has been volunteering at the walk and taking part in every city that you've been living in, and engaging in like a local event that happened in the Canadian cities that you've lived in. What was it like to actually go and then to like? Did you make that correlation where you're like, oh my God, this is we're raising all this money and then this is it. This is what's happening.
Yeah, I think it's really easy to see hardship on the news and to feel sadness and sympathetic towards other people's struggles. But I think through my work with the World Partnership Walk, with AKFC, and through the fellowship, I've learned that we can make a difference from right here at home in Canada. And I believe that there's such a responsibility that we all have as global citizens to take care of one another. That's something that I find so powerful. So being able to participate in the fellowship, be able to meet a young girl or a family or visit a community that's benefiting from the work that AKFC is undertaking with the support of everyday Canadians is so impactful. And I think that a lot of the time we feel that what the work we're doing doesn't make a difference overall in the grand scheme of things, or that global issues are so beyond the ability to fix them. But when you meet someone by name and face to face and learn about their story and the impact that the work AKFC is undertaking is having on their lives, it really ignites a spark in you and keeps you going. And it's incredible to be able to then share those stories with Canadians to inspire them as well.
Love that. That's great. Thank you for sharing that. I know right now is a bit of a bizarre time, because it's challenging what we're seeing happening in the world. But you're sharing some exciting anecdotes, and your experiences is enlightening. What will you say to people, or rather young people, who might want to follow your journey and take part in this fellowship, but also who don't necessarily know where to start or even why to start? What would you say to them?
Right. So it's really my hope that more people find a place in their lives and in their hearts to take that first step to make a difference in the world. And I touched a little bit on the fact that these global issues are so widespread. And so sometimes we feel disheartened, like we can't make a difference. But whether it's, raising awareness about an issue you're passionate about, or engaging in dialogue and discussion about one of these issues, whether it's, writing to a member of parliament to discuss something, or fundraising or volunteering at the World Partnership Walk, I think it's really important to take those first small steps. And witnessing firsthand the impact this is having in developing countries has made me realize that Canadians really have a part to play, and no step is too small to have an impact. You need to start somewhere. So those are some of the small things that you can do and build off of to really make a difference in the world and in the lives of those that live halfway across the globe.
All right, we are nearing the end of our celebration, but we can't celebrate 40 years of Aga Khan Foundation Canada without hearing from the CEO of AKFC, Khalil Sharif. I've known Khalil for many years now, and I'm so inspired by him and the work the foundation does. He is unrivaled in his passion for the work and his dedication for the volunteers who make it all happen. Thank you so much for allowing me to be your host tonight. Congratulations to Aga Khan Foundation Canada, to all the staff, the volunteers, the fundraisers, and the donors. I'm going to pass the mic on over to Khalil, who I'm sure has a message filled with hope and energy and some insight on what to expect in the next 40 years. Congratulations, good night, be safe. Khalil?
Thank you for joining us to commemorate Aga Khan Foundation Canada's 40th anniversary. Anniversaries are times to reflect on our past as well as our future. To quote His Highness the Aga Khan, to connect our roots with our dreams. AKFC's roots, now I think well embedded into the fabric of Canadian life, were born out of a commitment to mobilizing the best of Canada to improve the quality of life, especially for some of the most marginalized communities in the world. Over 4 decades, much has been accomplished, and I hope you've enjoyed glimpses of some of those achievements. Those achievements have been the product of a massive collective effort, and we have many people to be thankful for. The singular vision, leadership, generosity, and guidance of His Highness the Aga Khan and our board. The wisdom and care of generations of Canadian leaders from our National Committee and elsewhere who have stewarded this institution with such skill. The collegiality, partnership, and inspiration of all those we work with across the Aga Khan Development Network. The zeal and dedication of our staff and volunteers over these 4 decades who have adopted AKFC's mission as their own and who have made contributions of time and knowledge and expertise and inspiration that have fueled our efforts. And of course, to thousands, tens of thousands of supporters across this country who have made financial and other contributions, even at times of economic difficulty, that have sustained this institution and its work. So we have much to be thankful for as we look to the future. Commemorating this 40th anniversary at a time of a global pandemic, of economic challenge, and of increased and louder voices for equality remind us of how much work there is yet to be done. But we have also been reminded of how much is possible through countless acts of generosity, of solidarity, and of genuine connection. Those signs of hope, I think, will fuel our forward efforts together, not only to invest in improvements in the quality of life of communities around the world, but to do so in a way that enhances our connection to one another. Again, to quote His Highness, that might replace walls that divide with bridges that unite. So I thank you for all your contributions to Aga Khan Foundation Canada over these many decades. And I invite you to continue your work with us to recommit to a world of peace and prosperity and pluralism for all. Thank you.